Before you can become the best version of yourself, you must first confront a question that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Who are you, really? Beneath everything the world has placed on top of you, beneath the expectations your parents had for you, beneath the identity your friends assigned to you, beneath the labels your failures gave you and the limitations your fears constructed around you. Most people walking this earth today are living a version of themselves that was designed by external forces, by society's standards, by other people's opinions, by wounds that were never properly healed, by dreams that were abandoned too early because someone important said they were unrealistic. The best version of yourself is not a polished, perfect, flawless human being that exists somewhere in an imaginary future. The best version of yourself is an authentic one. It is the version that thinks its own thoughts without filtering them through the approval of others. It is the version that pursues meaning rather than applause, depth rather than performance, genuine growth rather than the appearance of growth for social consumption. Understanding who your best self is requires a level of brutal honesty that is deeply uncomfortable. It requires you to sit in silence and ask yourself questions that your ego will resist. Questions like, am I living for what I actually want? Or am I living for what I was told to want? Am I growing in the direction that feels true to me? Or am I growing in the direction that looks impressive to people whose opinion I have given too much power over my life? The journey to your best self begins not with action, but with awareness. You cannot build the right life if you do not first understand what the right life means specifically for you, not in comparison to anyone else, not according to any template society has provided, but according to the deepest, most honest understanding of your own values, your own gifts, and your own unique definition of a life well lived. This self-understanding is not something you arrive at once and carry forever unchanged. It is something you return to continuously, something that deepens as you grow, something that shifts as you gain wisdom and shed the layers of conditioning that have been accumulated since childhood. The journey inward is the most important journey you will ever take. And it is the non-negotiable first step toward becoming who you were always capable of being. One of the most underestimated obstacles between who you are today and who you are capable of becoming is not your circumstances, not your lack of resources, not the people who doubted you. It is the deeply ingrained habit of being your current self. Human beings are creatures of pattern. Your brain has spent years, sometimes decades, building neural pathways that make your current thoughts, reactions, behaviors, and beliefs feel automatic, effortless, and most dangerously normal. Every morning you wake up and think the same thoughts. You respond to challenges the same way. You speak to yourself with the same language. You make the same choices in the same situations because those patterns are comfortable, familiar, and require no conscious effort. And here is the brutal truth. Those patterns are building the same life you have always had. Transformation is not a motivational concept, it is a neurological process. To become a better version of yourself, you must literally rewire the way your brain operates. You must make the uncomfortable choice to interrupt the automatic and replace it with the intentional. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, every time you choose growth over comfort, every time you choose honesty over the comfortable lie you've been telling yourself, you are laying down a new neural pathway. You are physically rebuilding the architecture of who you are. But this process demands something that most people are unwilling to truly give: consistent, sustained, unglamorous effort over a long period of time. Not the 3-week burst of motivation that follows a powerful speech or a New Year's resolution. Real, committed, daily effort, applied even on the days when you feel nothing, when the progress is invisible, when the old version of you is screaming at you to return to what is familiar and safe. Breaking the habit of being your old self also requires grief, and this is something nobody talks about enough. When you genuinely change, you lose something. You lose the identity that was comfortable. You lose the excuses that protected you. You lose the story you have been telling about why you cannot be more than you currently are. And that loss, even when it is necessary and ultimately liberating, carries a real emotional weight that must be acknowledged rather than bypassed. Greatness is not an event. It is not a breakthrough moment, a single decision, or a dramatic turning point, though those things can contribute to it. Greatness is the accumulated result of thousands of small, daily disciplines practiced consistently over time, often without any visible reward or recognition in the short term. The best version of yourself will not arrive in a single day of maximum effort. It will be constructed brick by brick through the choices you make when nobody is watching, when no one is keeping score, when the motivation you felt at the beginning of this journey has faded and all that remains is the decision to continue anyway. Every morning routine that you protect is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every book you read instead of scrolling, every workout you complete when your mind is arguing against it, every healthy choice you make when the easier option is right in front of you. These are not small things. These are the foundation stones of an extraordinary life, and they carry a compounding power that most people tragically underestimate because the results are invisible in the early stages. Think about compound interest in finance. A small amount invested consistently, growing at a steady rate, becomes staggering wealth over time. Your daily disciplines work in exactly the same way. The meditation practice that feels pointless in the first week is rewiring your stress response over months. The writing habit that produces imperfect pages today is developing a voice and clarity that will communicate powerfully years from now. The physical training that feels like it is doing nothing in week 2 is building a body and a mental toughness that will carry you through challenges you cannot yet foresee. The challenge with daily discipline is that the gap between effort and visible result creates what many call the valley of disappointment, the dangerous stretch of time where you are doing everything right and seeing nothing change on the surface. This is where most people quit. This is where most people look at their life, see no evidence of progress, and conclude that the effort is not working. But underground, in ways that are not yet visible, everything is building. The roots are going deeper, the foundation is getting stronger, and the person who refuses to quit in that valley is the person who eventually emerges on the other side as someone unrecognizable from who they used to be. You will never outperform your deepest beliefs about yourself. Read that again and let it land fully, because it is one of the most important truths you will ever encounter on the path to becoming your best self. Your beliefs are not just opinions you hold. They are the operating system that runs every decision, every reaction, every level of effort, and every definition of what is possible for your life. And for most people, that operating system was installed during childhood, during formative experiences, during moments of failure or rejection or criticism, and it has never been examined, updated, or challenged with the full power of your adult awareness. Limiting beliefs are the invisible ceiling that keeps you from reaching your full potential. They are the quiet voice that says people like me do not succeed at things like that. They are the feeling that settles in your chest when an opportunity arrives that is bigger than what you believe you deserve. They are the subtle but powerful force that makes you self-sabotage just when things begin to go well, because somewhere in the depths of your conditioning, you do not fully believe that good things are allowed to last for you. Identifying your limiting beliefs is uncomfortable work because they are often disguised as logic. They present themselves as realistic assessments rather than fearful distortions. When you say, I am just not a creative person, that feels like a fact. When you say relationships never work out for me, that feels like a conclusion drawn from evidence. But these are not facts. They are stories. Stories built from selected memories, from experiences that were interpreted through the lens of pain, from things people said about you that you accepted as truth when you were too young or too hurt to challenge them. Overcoming limiting beliefs requires a process that is ongoing rather than linear. You must identify the belief clearly and specifically. You must examine the evidence for and against it with the same rigor you would apply to any claim you wanted to verify. And you must replace it consistently and deliberately with a belief that is both honest and expansive. Not toxic positivity, not delusion, but a genuine recalibration of what you allow yourself to believe is possible. This process changes everything, because the moment your beliefs expand, your actions expand. And when your actions expand, your life expands in ways that will astonish you. You are not just the product of your decisions, you are the product of your environment. The spaces you inhabit, the conversations you are surrounded by, the content you consume, the energy of the people you spend the most time with. All of these things are quietly and continuously shaping who you are becoming, whether you are paying attention to that process or not. Most people focus entirely on personal development as an internal endeavor. And while the internal work is absolutely foundational, it is nearly impossible to sustain meaningful growth when your environment is actively working against the person you are trying to become. Think about this honestly. If you are surrounded by people who celebrate mediocrity, who laugh at ambition, who make comfort their highest value, how much additional energy does it cost you every single day to maintain your commitment to growth against that current? If your physical environment is chaotic, disorganized, and cluttered, what does that do to the mental clarity you need to operate at your best? If the content you consume for hours each day is numbing rather than nourishing, what kind of thoughts is that feeding into your most important conversations, the ones you have with yourself? Upgrading your environment is not elitism. It is not abandoning the people you love. It is not pretending to be someone you are not. It is the deeply practical recognition that growth requires conditions that support growth, and that you have both the right and the responsibility to create those conditions for yourself. Seek out people who are further along than you in the areas where you want to grow, not to compare yourself to them destructively, but to absorb their thinking patterns, their standards, their relationship with effort and failure and possibility. Curate your physical space so that it reflects and reinforces the person you are working to become. Be intentional about what you allow into your mind through the media you consume, because your mind will work with whatever raw material you give it. And the quality of that raw material determines the quality of what your mind produces. Your environment is either an accelerator or a brake on your journey to your best self. The final and perhaps most liberating truth on the path to becoming the best version of yourself is learning to fall genuinely, deeply, and sustainably in love with the process of growth itself, rather than remaining fixated exclusively on the destination. Because here is the reality that most motivational content carefully avoids: there is no final destination. There is no point at which you arrive at your best self and plant a flag and declare the journey complete. The best version of yourself is not a fixed location. It is a direction. It is a continuous, expanding, ever-deepening commitment to becoming more aware, more capable, more compassionate, more courageous, and more aligned with what matters most to you. When your entire motivation is attached to the outcome, to the achievement, to the arrival, you suffer twice. You suffer through the process because the discomfort feels pointless without the reward already in hand. And you suffer after the achievement because the relief and satisfaction are always shorter lived than you anticipated, leaving you immediately searching for the next destination to attach your sense of worth and purpose to. But when you fall in love with the process, when you find genuine meaning in the daily act of becoming, when you can sit in the middle of a difficult chapter and feel gratitude for what it is teaching you, when you begin to see each setback, not as a verdict on your worth, but as information that is sharpening your understanding, everything changes. The journey becomes the reward. The growth becomes the point. The daily discipline stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like expression. The expression of a person who has chosen, deliberately and repeatedly, to honor their potential with their effort. Falling in love with growth also means developing a new relationship with failure, seeing it not as evidence that you are not enough, but as the most honest and accurate feedback mechanism available to you. Every failure is a lesson delivered at the exact moment you are ready to receive it. Every struggle is developing a specific capacity that your future will require. Every uncomfortable season is preparing you for a level of life that your current self is not yet equipped to sustain. Love the process. Trust the journey. Honor the daily work. I want you to do something before we begin. I want you to think about a moment, one specific moment where you caught a glimpse of who you could truly be. Maybe it was a split second of clarity during a quiet morning. Maybe it was a surge of confidence you felt briefly before the doubt rushed back in. Maybe it was the feeling you got reading about someone's story and thinking with a certainty that went all the way to your core, that is what my life is supposed to look like. Maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe it was just a moment where the noise of the world fell away and something inside you said quietly but unmistakably, there is more in you than you are currently using. You felt it. You recognized it. And then, almost immediately, something else arrived. The doubt, the practicality, the voice that listed every reason why that version of you is too far from where you currently stand. The exhaustion of looking at the distance between who you are and who you felt in that moment you could be. And here is what most people do with that gap. They close the vision down. They make their dreams smaller so the distance feels more manageable. They tell themselves that the glimpse they caught was not real, that it was naive, idealistic, the product of a temporary feeling that has no place in the real world they have to navigate every single day. And they go back to the routine that is comfortable but not fulfilling, back to the habits that are familiar but not serving them, back to the version of themselves that they have settled into. Not because it is who they truly are, but because it is who they have practiced being for long enough that it feels permanent. But here is what I need you to understand before we go any further. That glimpse was not a fantasy. It was not a delusion. It was not wishful thinking dressed up as inspiration. That glimpse was a preview. It was your own potential reaching forward through time and showing you what is genuinely, specifically personally possible for your life if you are willing to make certain choices, endure certain discomforts, and commit to a journey that will demand more from you than anything you have ever attempted. And in the next few minutes, we are going to talk about that journey together. Not in vague, feel-good terms that sound wonderful and evaporate by tomorrow morning, but in real, honest, deeply specific terms that I believe will change the way you see yourself, the way you understand your potential, and the way you approach every single day that follows this one. Stay with me until the very end, because the best version of you showed up to hear this, and it would be a shame to send them away early. There is a version of you that wakes up without an alarm, not because sleep is optional, but because purpose is louder than comfort. There is a version of you that looks at challenges the way an athlete looks at a difficult training session, not with dread, but with a kind of quiet excitement, because you know that difficulty is the mechanism through which you grow. There is a version of you that speaks to yourself with respect, that makes decisions from a place of values rather than fear, that has built a life, not perfect, but deeply aligned with what genuinely matters to you. That version exists, not as a fantasy, not as an unachievable ideal, but as the natural result of specific choices, specific disciplines, and a specific quality of commitment applied over time. The question that changes everything is not whether that version of you is possible, it is. The question is, what are you willing to become in order to live that life? Let us begin with the most important conversation you will ever have, and that is the one you have with yourself about who you actually are beneath everything that has been placed on top of you. Most of us are living lives that were designed by accumulation rather than intention. We accumulated the expectations of our families and absorbed them as our own desires. We accumulated the opinions of people around us and mistook their perspective for objective truth. We accumulated the wounds of our past and allowed them to write the story of our limitations. We accumulated habits not through deliberate choice, but through repetition. Doing the same things not because they serve us, but because we have done them long enough that they feel like part of our identity. And so the person you are today, the one looking at their life and sensing there is more, is not necessarily who you are at your core. That person is, in many ways, a first draft, a rough version assembled from borrowed beliefs, inherited fears, and patterns that were never consciously chosen. The best version of yourself is the deliberate version, the one who has sat down with honesty and asked the questions most people spend a lifetime avoiding. What do I actually value? Not what I was told to value, but what genuinely matters to me when everything else is stripped away. What kind of life would feel deeply meaningful to me? Not impressive, not enviable, but meaningful. What am I pretending not to know about the gap between who I am right now and who I have the capacity to become? These questions are the beginning of everything. Now I want to talk about something that nobody in the world of self-improvement discusses with sufficient honesty: the profound difficulty of changing. Not the concept, change. Everyone loves the concept of change. Change is inspiring. It makes for great speeches and powerful content. But the actual, lived, daily experience of changing, of genuinely transforming who you are at the level of thought, behavior, belief, and habit is one of the hardest things a human being can undertake, because your brain does not distinguish between what is good for you and what is familiar to you. To your brain, familiar is safe. Familiar is efficient. Familiar is the path of least neurological resistance. And every time you attempt to think differently, behave differently, respond to the world differently, your brain creates friction. It generates discomfort. It sends signals that feel like warning signs: this is wrong, this is too hard, go back to what you know. And most people interpret that friction as failure. They feel the discomfort of growth and conclude that they are not capable of changing. They feel the awkwardness of new habits and decide that those habits are not for them. They feel the difficulty of thinking differently and retreat into the thinking patterns that are automatic, even when those patterns are making them miserable. But what if that friction is not a stop sign? What if it is a starting line? Every moment of genuine discomfort in the pursuit of growth is neurological evidence that you are rewiring. You are literally building new pathways in your brain. And just like building a new road, the process is messy and difficult and looks like nothing useful for a significant period of time, until suddenly the road is built and traveling it becomes effortless. The path to your best self runs directly through the discomfort you have been avoiding. There is no detour. There is no shortcut. There's no version of this journey that is entirely comfortable, because comfort and growth are, by definition, different directions. Choose growth. Choose it daily. Choose it especially on the days when it costs you the most. I want to speak for a moment about the life that daily discipline actually builds, because I think most people understand discipline intellectually and still deeply underestimate it practically. When people think about discipline, they often think about punishment, restriction, sacrifice. They think about the things they cannot have, the pleasures they must forego, the freedoms they must surrender in the name of becoming better. And when discipline is framed that way, it is no wonder that it is so difficult to maintain. But I want to offer you a different frame. Discipline is not the enemy of your freedom. Discipline is the architect of your freedom. The person who disciplines their financial habits is free from the prison of debt and financial anxiety. The person who disciplines their physical habits is free from the limitations of a body that cannot keep up with their life. The person who disciplines their mind, who chooses what they consume, how they think, what they allow to take up residence in their mental space, is free from the tyranny of reactive thinking and emotional chaos that derails so many lives. Every act of discipline is a deposit into the account of the person you are becoming. Every morning you protect, every evening you use wisely, every temptation you navigate thoughtfully, every commitment you honor, even when no one is watching. These are not small, inconsequential things. These are the actual, literal, structural components of an extraordinary life being assembled one choice at a time. And here is what makes it extraordinary. The effects compound. The person who reads for 30 minutes a day does not simply know 30 minutes more than you by the end of a week. Over a year, over 5 years, over a decade, they have built an entirely different mind. A mind that connects ideas in ways that others cannot. A mind that solves problems with resources others do not have access to. A mind that leads in rooms where others follow, not because they are inherently more gifted, but because they chose to compound their growth while others chose to coast. The disciplines that feel small today are building the life that will feel extraordinary tomorrow. Now let us have the most honest conversation of this entire speech, the one about your beliefs. Specifically about the beliefs that are quietly, consistently, and devastatingly limiting the life you are able to build. Every human being is operating according to a belief system that was largely built before they had the awareness or the capacity to evaluate it critically. Before you were 10 years old, you had already absorbed thousands of beliefs about who you are, what you deserve, what is possible for someone like you, and what the world is like. Those beliefs were built from your experiences, from the things people said to you, from the things that happened to you, from the way the people around you navigated their lives and the conclusions you drew from watching them. And here is the terrifying part. Most of those beliefs are still running your life today, unchanged, unexamined, still shaping your choices in ways you have not yet recognized because they operate below the surface of conscious awareness. You have a belief about your intelligence that determines how confidently you pursue complex goals. You have a belief about your worthiness of love that determines the quality of relationships you allow into your life. You have a belief about whether people like you succeed in the areas where you want to grow. And that belief is making decisions on your behalf every single day. Becoming your best self requires that you become a ruthless examiner of these beliefs. Not with self-judgment or shame, those are not useful tools here, but with curiosity, with the genuine desire to understand which of your beliefs are accurate reflections of reality and which are inherited limitations masquerading as facts. When you find a limiting belief, and you will find several, perhaps many, do not try to destroy it immediately. Instead, question it. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? What experience created it? Is that experience the definitive truth about what is possible for me? Or is it one data point that I have inflated into a universal law? Then begin the deliberate work of replacing it. Not with empty affirmations pasted on your bathroom mirror, but with evidence. Deliberately create experiences that challenge your limiting beliefs. Take action in the areas where your limiting beliefs hold the most power, because nothing dismantles a false belief faster than lived experience that contradicts it. Your beliefs are the ceiling of your life. The moment you raise the ceiling, everything grows. There is something I want you to consider about the environment you are building your growth inside of, because it matters far more than most people realize. You can have the most powerful internal commitment to growth imaginable. You could wake up every day with clarity and conviction. You could know your values, understand your limiting beliefs, and be fully committed to your daily disciplines. And you could still find that progress is agonizingly slow and fragile if the environment surrounding your growth is actively working against it. Look at the conversations that fill your daily life. Are they conversations that expand your thinking, challenge your assumptions, and fill you with a sense of what is possible? Or are they conversations that circle the same complaints, celebrate the same limitations, and make comfortable the same mediocrity that you are trying to move beyond? Look at your physical space. Does your environment reflect and reinforce the person you are committed to becoming? Or does it carry the visual, emotional, and energetic signature of the old version of you, the one you are working to evolve beyond? Look at the content that fills the majority of your mental bandwidth each day. Are you feeding your mind material that builds vision, develops wisdom, and generates the kind of thinking that produces extraordinary lives? Or are you flooding your mind with content designed purely to entertain, distract, and numb? Content that is not harmful in small doses, but devastating when it occupies the space where your growth should be happening. You deserve an environment that fights for your growth rather than against it. Design it, protect it, and understand that curating your environment is not a luxury. It is one of the most powerful and practical investments you can make in the person you are working to become. And finally, perhaps most importantly of all, I want to talk to you about the relationship you need to develop with the process itself. Because the journey to your best self is not a sprint to a destination. It is a lifelong commitment to a direction and the quality of that journey, whether it is characterized by suffering and impatience or by meaning and genuine fulfillment, depends almost entirely on whether you are in love with the process or merely tolerating it in pursuit of an outcome. When your entire sense of progress is tied to outcomes, you will spend the majority of your growth journey feeling like you are failing, because outcomes take time. Outcomes are influenced by factors beyond your control. Outcomes are the last thing to change when you begin doing the work, and the gap between beginning the work and seeing the results is long enough and uncomfortable enough that most people never cross it. But when you fall in love with the process, when you learn to find meaning and even joy in the daily acts of choosing better, thinking deeper, trying again, learning from failure, showing up consistently, you are never waiting for your life to begin. It has already begun. Every day is already meaningful. Every act of growth is already a reward. And paradoxically, when you stop being desperate for the outcome, when you release the anxious, grasping need for immediate results and surrender to genuine investment in the process, the outcomes tend to arrive. Not always on your timeline, not always in the form you expected, but they arrive. Because the compound effect of daily devotion to growth is mathematically unavoidable. Fall in love with who you are becoming, not just who you want to be. Fall in love with the effort, not just the achievement. Fall in love with the version of you that wakes up every day and chooses growth, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days, because that version of you is already extraordinary. Everything we have covered today points to a single, undeniable, liberating truth. The best version of yourself is not a distant, unreachable ideal that belongs to more talented, more gifted, more fortunate people. It is the natural and inevitable result of specific, sustained, courageous choices applied consistently over time. It is built from understanding who you truly are beneath the conditioning. It is built from the willingness to break the comfortable patterns that are keeping you small. It is built from daily disciplines practiced without recognition in the early stages. It is built from confronting the beliefs that have been capping your potential without your conscious permission. It is built from environments designed to accelerate rather than obstruct your growth. And it is built from a deep, genuine, sustaining love for the process of becoming, for the daily, unglamorous, profoundly meaningful work of honoring your potential with your effort. You will not become your best self in one inspired afternoon. You will not become your best self simply because you watched a powerful video or heard a moving speech. You will become your best self through the choices you make tomorrow morning when the inspiration has faded and only the commitment remains, through the choice to get up when every part of you wants to stay down, through the choice to try again when failure has just delivered its most discouraging verdict, through the choice to believe in your potential when the evidence is not yet visible and the timeline feels unbearably long. That is where your best self is built, in those quiet, difficult, invisible, irreplaceable moments of choosing to become. And I want you to know with everything I have that you are capable of it, not someday. Not when the circumstances align and the resources appear and the timing is perfect. Now, with what you have, from exactly where you are standing today. The best version of you is not waiting for a better situation. It is waiting for a better decision. Make it today. Make it tomorrow. Make it every single day until the life you are living and the person you have become are something that would have taken your breath away if you could have seen it from where you started. That person is in you. It always has been to every person who stayed until this very moment. Your presence here matters. The fact that you sought this out, that you listened, that you allowed these ideas to sit with you rather than dismissing them, That is already evidence of the best version of you showing up. That is already proof that something in you is reaching toward more and that something deserves to be honored and not ignored. Go back to your life today with one thing, a decision, not a plan, not a strategy, not a perfectly organized system, just one decision, the decision that from this point forward, you will take the possibility of your best self seriously. That you will stop treating your potential as a vague, distant concept and start treating it as a daily responsibility. You were not placed on this earth to live a fraction of what you are capable of. You were not given this life, these gifts, this particular and unrepeatable combination of experience and perspective and potential, to leave most of it unused. The world needs the best version of you, not a performance of greatness, but the genuine article, built slowly, honestly, and powerfully through every small choice you are willing to make. Good luck on your journey. May every day forward be a step deeper into who you were always meant to be. May you find the courage to begin, the discipline to continue, and the wisdom to recognize how extraordinary the process of becoming truly is. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. Now go become who you came here to be.